You
Yep.
have a
Okay.
need for precision. So, let's give him another minute.
Ay, ay, ay. So this is the stuff that I brought that I don't need.
Well, I think we should start.
Okay.
So, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our meeting this evening of the City of Grass Valley Planning Commission. We have this meeting on the third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. The Planning Commission welcomes you to its meetings, which are regularly scheduled. I told you that. Your interest is encouraged and appreciated. This meeting is being videotaped and is scheduled for rebroadcast on NCTV 17. Please consult the NCTV program listings as to the schedule of future broadcasts, and that's at nevadacountytv.org. This meeting is also being broadcast on the internet, excuse me, at www.cityofgrassvalley.com. Click on the lower middle button when you get there. It says Video City Council Meetings, and you'll find us. This meeting is also being recorded on audio tape. The location of the meeting is wheelchair accessible, and listening devices are available if needed. Other special accommodations may be made upon request to the city clerk 72 hours in advance of the meeting. I ask that you please turn off all your cell phones or similar devices at this time. Staff reports and background information related to regular agenda items are available at City of Grass Valley, 125 East Main Street, Grass Valley, California. They're also available on the website, correct? Yes, you can also find them on the website. So with those announcements, again, welcome. I call the meeting to order. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Cookson to run the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Spasher, would you please take the roll?
Present.
Present.
Present. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. So if anyone has any additions or so forth, changes, please say so. Otherwise, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I would like to approve the agenda.
That's good. Okay. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Totally.
We've had a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the action minutes. I think we all got a copy of them. The minutes are for June 9th, the meeting of June 19th, 2018. If you've reviewed the minutes, then I'll take a motion to accept them or change them.
I'll make a motion to accept the action minutes of June 19th, 2018.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. A motion has been made to approve. And it's been seconded for the action minutes of June 19th, 2018. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now at the time of our meeting is time for public comment. We limit the time for public comment for each person to 5 minutes per person. This time of comment is for items not on the agenda. You may come to the podium at this time. I ask that you provide your name and address for the record. If the items you wish to speak to are on the agenda, you may speak to them during the regularly scheduled agenda item. excuse me, individuals wishing to submit written information at the meeting must furnish 10 copies to the Planning Commission clerk in advance to allow for distribution to the commission members and staff. Welcome.
Thank you. Matthew Coulter, Grass Valley. I brought a little flag I've had for a number of years. If you can read that? You can't read it. An
Sorry.
appeal to heaven. And it has a tree on it, basically representing each tree is an appeal to heaven. Locally here, we've had numerous historic trees cut down. When I say locally, I mean within a few blocks of City Hall. The one Saturday morning, which I was citizen arrested and taken to jail for disturbing the peace while a chipper and 2 chainsaws were running by an unpermitted arborist, uninsured. Even on the contractor's website it says do not hire, with a crane, and always Saturday mornings because they know they can get away with it and there's no one to call. So I got arrested because they were cutting down a tree illegally. The tree's gone now, it can't be put back. Pretty sad, and it's not the only one it's happened to here recently. I have a whole collection of photographs recently with dates, with measuring tapes, with all trees that fall under the historic category, the protected category for the city, that have been removed without permits. Nothing posted on the tree, nothing told to the citizens that their neighborhood tree, which is in perfect health, most of them are standalone trees that are not interfering with anything. And I had one woman from the Bay Area tell me she doesn't like to rake leaves, and she bought the house for an Airbnb, and it's got to be low maintenance. So that's why the tree had to come out. Then today, arrested a second time for supposedly threatening a government official. The gentleman at the table there on your far left, his hands to his face. Supposedly it's on tape with me threatening him. And I hope that City Hall can save their tape, because multiple times he has flipped me off at the front counter, belittled me at the front counter, with witnesses, with customers. Very odd behavior for a city developer. I'm not sure what we're trying to develop here. So the tree thing was why I got arrested the other day. Why I got arrested today, I believe, was for protesting, speaking my mind, talking to HR about public works, forcing me off the road on my bicycle in their trucks, getting calls from the head of public works, threatening me to meet for fights, as well as Mr. Last wanting to go outside and fight right over the front counter. I expect far more from the city and far more from the people working for the city. It wasn't a pleasant experience going to Wayne Brown. As a matter of fact, I will offer to wash their cells because they're so filthy. They're way out of Sammy's friend standards, that's for sure. And it's extremely sad. Talked to quite a few people over there. A lot of homeless people being poured in. They're all coming out of Placer County too. Everyone knows they're being shipped out of Placer County. We're not doing anything about it. We're not doing anything about Loma Rica, Happy Camp. We're not doing anything about a woman that sits on the street for 3 days in her own feces on Main Street here until someone finally picks her up after I bring her pants, because she has no pants and no water or nothing, just sitting on the concrete. I know you're the Planning Commission, but I look at it as all being connected, as a team effort from the council, planning, the people that we pay the high dollar funds to, the lawyers, all these people to keep us safe in our city. I no longer feel safe, and not from the people, the homeless people. Some of them are the kindest people you'd meet. Now I have to fear the city itself. The city itself, the city employees. You will not scare me away. You will not intimidate me. You've tried with multiple people, multiple times. Now it's moved up to the police level. I don't know where you're going to take it from here, but short of killing me, you will not shut me up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coulter. Would anyone else like to address the commission? No? Then I'll close the time for public comment. Thank you. We have 2 public hearings this evening. The first one is tentative parcel map 18 PLN-24 for the division of a 6.68 acre parcel into 2 parcels. Parcel 1 being 6.18 acres and parcel 2 being plus or minus 0.5 acres, sorry. Property is located at 302 Railroad Avenue in the heavy commercial C2 zone. Environmental determination is categorical exemption. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Bateman, Planning Commissioners, Lance Lowe, Community Development Department. Before you, as stated, is a tentative parcel map for the division of a 6.6 acre parcel into 2 parcels, 6.18 and a half acres in the heavy commercial zone. It's located at 302 Railroad Avenue, as shown as attachments 1 and 2 your staff report. John Olson is the applicant, and the representative is Kevin Nelson, resides beside me, or sitting beside me at the right. Here's the subject property at 302 Railroad Avenue. It's at the corner of Railroad Avenue in Union Jack. For reference, here's the 49er Fun Park and the rental guys' heavy equipment rental yard. There's a lot line adjustment that was done, so the property actually goes to here. In 1994, the city approved cellular communication tower, and it's located at this area here at the southwest corner of the property. Before he denied his tentative parcel map to divide the telecommunications site from the remainder of the heavy commercial property. Here's a view of the property, looking to the north. Likewise, looking to the north, here is the cell tower here in the background. Here's the property looking south on Union Jack, and then the property at the southern end of the property looking west along the 40-foot access easement. Again, it's a tentative parcel map. Tentative parcel map subdivides existing improvements, namely the telecommunications tower. 40-foot easement is reserved for access. That won't be removed or improved, but will remain as is. No future development or no development is occurring with this map application. From a secret perspective, it qualifies for a Class 15 category exemption for minor land divisions. The general plan for this area is commercial, and the property's in the heavy commercial zone. And with respect to conditions of approval, staff has imposed standard conditions of approval on the project. Engineering would like to add a condition of approval requiring additional right-of-way along Union Jack Road. And so we've requested that from the applicant. He is agreeable to adding that condition, and therefore staff is recommending that the project or the commission determine the project category exempt, adopt findings of fact for approval of the tentative map, and approve the tentative parcel map in accordance with the condition of approval, with the added condition of approval that we get additional right-of-way along Union Jack Street. That concludes staff's presentation. Pretty simple project. We're simply dividing out existing property for existing improvements.
Would the applicant like to make comments?
No, good
No.
evening. Yeah. Kevin Nelson, Nelson Engineering, representing Mr. Olson this evening. It's pretty, as Lance said, pretty straightforward project. Basically what this is to separate out the cell towers from the property per the agreement from with John Olson and the rental guys with the sale of that property, and allow him to keep that half acre with the cell tower income on that, and possibly add a little building or something in the future, but there is no plans for anything at this time. And then, I've worked with Zach Lake with engineering to come up with this alignment. There may be some fine tuning with that alignment, and we'll work with staff on that. Obviously, we can only grant the portion that's on this subject parcel, but that's what we're agreeable to. With that, nope, everything else in the conditions of approval we're satisfied with, and hope you agree. And if you have any other questions, be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Lance or Mr. Nelson?
I'm sorry, I was just looking at this map tonight. So the parcel that says Olson on it and has a little kind of sun, that must be the tower.
That's actually the rental guy's property. As we were putting this together, we were just finishing the lot line adjustment, and so the lot line adjustment literally just recorded maybe 6 weeks ago or so. Probably went through you. You have a date for us? So at that time in the
The tower's located in
The
the
tower's
southwest
is-
corner of the property,
it's
right in this
In parcel 2.
that's
parcel
parcel two.
correct, yes.
My mistake,
Correct.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
You can kind of see the fence enclosures on parcel 2 that enclose the 2 towers there.
Kevin, the fine tuning that you were talking about, is that something, and maybe Lance or Tom can interject too, is that something that it would have to come back to planning commission, or would that just be on a staff kind of over the counter thing?
It would be a staff review of the final map. They would work out the language for that ultimate dedication along Union Jack, yeah.
I actually did the alignment study back in 2003, I think it was, or something that did get adopted for this road.
Keeps coming around and
and it
around.
It's coming back around. They changed a little bit of the alignment with the apartments coming off of Bennett, and so that's what we might want to take a look at just to make sure that things blend in there well. So that's where we might have a few minor little tweaks, but we'll happy to work with staff on that.
And the right-of-way is from Union Jack Road, correct?
Correct, the Union Jack Road on the east side of this parcel, yeah.
Any more questions? I'll take question or comments from the audience at this time.
Matthew Coulter, Grass Valley. Could you put up the overhead Google picture again, please? Is the Planning Commission familiar with this land at all? So, you know, this is the community garden, right? And so that'll be gone. Removed. I was wondering where the line was going to be on another factor, but my main reason and concern about this is basically the top of the line, basically right where the red line is there at the bottom is the watershed for Wolf Creek going that way. The watershed from the red line going that way goes to South Wolf Creek, very close. All the runoff from what used to be Golden Green is now owned by a corporation, has a small concrete plant with no mitigation that runs directly into Wolf Creek. And if you're not familiar with where Wolf Creek is, it's right here. Also, the concrete plant next to them, AA Concrete, was a 2-truck operation. Grandfathered in, I was told. It's a 15-truck operation now. Pictures from just recently show that the expansion of their property pushing back into the graveyard hill, I'm surprised caskets weren't popping out. So they've expanded their footprint with no permits, and the runoff coming off that property is quite extreme. Concrete is one of those things. When I talk with Hanson Brothers, it's a whole different can of worms. They recycle, they gather, they capture. Even their trucks have all capture systems on them now. They don't leave puddles of concrete on the ground here and there like used to be standard, or dump it in the most convenient place. It's not the case over here. It's basically a pollution nightmare going on there at the end, and I think any development that happens on the hill will just add to the runoff straight down into Wolf Creek. And without even mitigating the businesses that are already there, I don't see how we can cram more stuff in there already without doing anything at all, and just ignoring the fact that our creek is being heavily polluted with all kinds of lime and waste products all along Railroad, actually, right? So across the street there's a wrecking yard, tow place with leaky cars. And then next to that's an old gas place, right? You look out back, they have all kinds of rotting gas containers that are rusting out in the bottom right next to the creek. No one seems to care about that piece of road. I keep hearing heavy industrial. So the dust that comes off this area comes into the cemetery. You're up there visiting the cemetery, get ready. You might as well take your mask with you. Because the whole Red Man side of that cemetery, the dust that comes off the concrete plant when the wind's blowing covers it. So these are things I think you guys have some control over. So when you approve more, at the same time, I don't think we can grandfather in things and just say, well, that's the way it's always been. Sure. When I worked at Smokey's gas station in Nevada City, he would tell me dump the oil in the creek. We don't do that anymore. Thank you.
Additional comments from the public? Thank you. I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, thoughts, questions?
Well, at this point, we're simply talking about dividing the property into, we're not talking about any building, we're simply readjusting.
There's no development
No
proposed at this
development, yeah.
time, no. And they would have to go through a permitting process.
Exactly.
If and when that's proposed, yes.
Yeah, so this is just a lot split.
And there is no elimination of the community garden. That will remain as is.
Yeah,
Just to
thank you.
clarify that.
I'm good. Thanks.
Good? Okay, I'm good. I'll entertain a motion to approve application 18 PLN-24.
I'll make a motion that we approve application 18 PLN-24. The tentative parcel map, determine the project categorically exempt, adopt findings of fact for approval, and approve the tentative parcel map in accordance with the conditions of approval as presented in the staff report.
Subject to the right of way.
And subject to the right of way. Thank you, Liz Coots. Appreciate that. I need that.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, commissioners. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? That would be no one. There's only 3 of us. Excuse me.
This meeting's running very smoothly.
It sure is. Thank you very much. The next application and public hearing. One moment, give me one moment. Is for application number 18 PLN-27. It's a tentative parcel map for the division of a 2.16 acre parcel into 2 parcels of parcel 1 plus or minus 1.36 acres and parcel 2 plus or minus 0.8 acres. Location is 300 Jan Road. Owner Jill Warner and Representative Richard Moorhead is here this evening. Lance, Mr. Moorhead?
Chair Bateman, Planning Commissioners. Before we get started, we did receive a piece of correspondence from Mr. Ray and Amy Shine regarding the proposal. So you have a copy of that, so make sure you had that. Again, before you tonight is a tentative parcel map for the division of a 2.16 acre parcel into 2 parcels of 1.36 acres and 0.08 acres in a single residential zone. Property is located at 300 Jan Road. Jill M. Warner is Rocal Trust, that's the ownership, and Mr. Richard Moorhead is here to my right, representing the applicant. Here's the property, the 2.616 acre property. It's at the end of Hill and Jill Street. Here's Hill Street, Jill Street. Here's the cul-de-sac at the end of that junction. We have a private road, 40-foot right-of-way with a 20-foot road. For context, this is Doris Drive and Celestial Avenue located here. Here's a larger view of that. Also shows the property configuration. When we start talking about public roads, this will be pertinent to that discussion. The road itself is fee title ownership of the property here with subservient easements for this property, and this property located here. Again, here's Doris Drive, Celestial Avenue, Hill, Jill Road, and there's that cul-de-sac that ends where the private road begins. Jan Road, excuse me. Here's a view of the property, looking west at the cul-de-sac. Here's the end of the cul-de-sac located here. Here's the property, Jan Road, looking east. You'll note there's a gate located here at the property entrance. Here's the property looking south, and here's the property looking southeast, located here. Again, before you, tonight's parcel map, creating 2 parcels. Tentative parcel map separates existing improvements. We have a single-family dwelling on the 1.36 acre parcel, and the parcel that is being slated for, or proposed for subdivision is 0.8 acres. It's currently undeveloped. Access is from Jan Road. Here is a private road. Jan Road is gated about at this location here. And water is provided via Jan Road, in that we have public utilities in a private road. So it's kind of an odd situation. So we do have public utilities here, public water that serves serves the development on Jan Road. City water line, we have a city sewer line here along Doris Drive, and an easement across to the cul-de-sac. So we have city water and sewer serving the property currently. Electricity is provided by Pacific Gas and Electric, and storm drainage is handled by Overland Release. Basically, just drains through natural drainage courses. Just to give you a little background, there's some background here that staff recently became aware of. The properties were created by a parcel map in 1975 and annexed in the city in 1976. Here is a copy of the parcel map approved in 1975. In 1976, as part of essentially what was an annexation agreement, due to the lack of city services, the city required essentially 3 things. 1, to enter an agreement for water, sewage, and the status of Jan and Doris Drive. 2, to improve this road, dedicate right-of-way, and improve this road to city standard. The annexation agreement in 76 also noted that no further subdivision of the property would occur until that happened, that dedication of right-of-way and installation of, or construction of a public road. That did not happen, and it doesn't exist currently. And then the last thing the annexation agreement in 76 did is require a public utility easement for dedication from the cul-de-sac, which is located here to Doris Drive, and that currently exists. In 1999, so in 76, the annexation agreement was required essentially 3 things. We had an application in 99 following the annexation agreement, and essentially the map that was considered in 99 is essentially the same map we're looking at today, okay? It was basically subdivision of this property. In review of that, in public, certain conditions of approval were imposed on the map. This property went through a number of hearings. Ultimately, the applicants requested withdrawal of that application. So the finalizing of those conditions and the approval of denial of the map never did occur. Nonetheless, Public Works drafted a memo in 99 that basically recognized the agreement in 76 and imposed 8 conditions of approval. And that is attached as your staff report as attachment 8, going over those. And I'll go over briefly those 8 conditions of approval. And that is dedication of right-of-way at this location here, and the improvement of basically the cul-de-sac, which is done. So the improvement, curb gutter sidewalk, has been installed along this cul-de-sac here. So those conditions, and that's condition 1 and 2, have been completed. Okay. Also required a dedication of a 30-foot right-of-way, 33-foot right-of-way, and the enlarging the radius of the cul-de-sac. That hasn't been completed. And construction of curb, gutter, and sidewalk along the entire length, and then elimination of a median which is located at the end of the cul-de-sac. There's a little median that contains a fire hydrant at the end of the cul-de-sac. And that's located here. I'm sorry. So, yeah, dedication of right-of-way, construction of curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and improvement of the road. And then elimination of the median at the end of the cul-de-sac because it didn't meet city standards. Okay, so that's that's 5 of the conditions that were requested at the time in 99, looking at the same map that we're considering tonight. Fire hydrants in the median. So you see it here. If you look on your map,
Center there?
yeah, the center, you look on the map, you see the FH at the center of the cul-de-sac. Yeah, there's a fire hydrant located there. Okay. And number 6 condition imposed in 99 was completion of a drainage study. We have no verification that was done, and construction of drain improvements, likewise, really no verification that was done. And then a geotech for the road itself to make sure that the underlayment essentially met city standards, and it wouldn't sink if it was dedicated to the city. Those were the conditions that were imposed to implement the 1976 agreement. And if you look at the letter in 99, essentially, and I'll read it verbatim to you, the city engineer at the time, Rudy Golinek, states that, I do believe that these conditions satisfy the intent of the original 75 agreement. As an option, I request that the Planning Department and Planning Commission investigate the option that the existing segment of Jan Road north of the cul-de-sac remain private. It is highly unlikely this section of Jan Road will ever connect or go anywhere. And so essentially, he recommended these conditions to implement the 76 agreement, but then went on to say that we should really look at this as a private road. Public Works has looked at this 1999 letter, and it still stands true today. The conditions of approval that would implement the 76 agreement, and really the basis or the premise that it should really stay private. So we concur with the letter in 1999, and that's attached to your staff report. So as such, I think really the heart of the discussion tonight is really whether or not the road, Jan Road, should be public or private. And as outlined in your staff report, we have a number of reasons why we believe it should just remain private. It's serving very few parcels. Jan Road is not anticipated to ever be connected to Doris Drive area or serve as a collector to any other street in the immediate area. Several upgrades to Jan Road would be required. That may be infeasible. Going back to the aerial photograph of who owns what, imposing a public street would really be contingent upon a third party, albeit that third party was subject to the 76 agreement. But it would really be require somebody not part of this application to agree to that condition of approval. And then although it's stated in the annexation agreement, we're creating one parcel, a total of 4 parcels that are built much less than what normally is built per the general plan density and the zoning. Having someone incur that cost to upgrade a road for one parcel seems, I mean, certainly there's a nexus there. We're adding some additional vehicle trips, but the rough proportionality is it seems rather unbalanced. It's a lot of cost considering the benefit of this particular entitlement. So we recommend that Planning Commission consider that as well. Also, the fire department has reviewed it and has, with the exception of the gate, has no concerns. Not a problem with access, not a problem with location of the fire hydrant, had no concerns. They do want to see if, should the Planning Commission approve this project, that the gate be widened to 20 feet, which would comply to current fire department standards, and that they have a Knox box, i.e. a key, so they can get access to the property when they deem appropriate. And lastly, for obvious reasons, the city would rather, given the number of people that serve on this property, or served by this property, or road rather, would rather not incur the cost to maintain this road. There's only 4 parcels. It's been private for a number of years, and we see no reason to have it go public. It's not going anywhere. It would just be more maintenance for the city to undertake. From a CEQA perspective, again, this project would qualify for a categorical exemption in accordance with minor land divisions. Again, the general plan is low-density residential, 1 to 4 units per acre. And currently, with this proposal, we're about 1.33, so just meets the minimum density for the general plan, and is much larger than the 6,000 square foot parcel required, a minimum parcel required in the R1 zone. Specifically, conditions of approval, we have a number of conditions of approval. Of the conditions imposed per the annexation agreement, of those 8 conditions, most of them have been addressed, okay? The conditions of approval that we have tonight or before you would supplement those conditions of approval that have not been addressed. Specifically, condition number three is the Public Works Department, Engineering Department requested an irrevocable offer of dedication. Should the property ever be public, we'd like to see that we'd have that irrevocable offer for public access. Public Works, it wants to modify that condition and not require the irrevocable offer of dedication, and simply note a condition on a map or note on the map that should the road ever be built to current standards, or should the property ever be dedicated for public use, it would have to be built to current standards. And we can simply handle that by a note on the map. So we want to modify condition number B3, which is on page 9 of your staff report, just to require that should the street be developed or be dedicated for public use, it has to be developed in accordance with city standards. Okay. Also, should the Planning Commission decide that the road not be required to be public and then be private, we want a maintenance agreement to make sure that the property owners are maintaining that. It's in pretty decent shape. We would just want something to memorialize who's responsible for what. Also, we want a small segment of right-of-way along Doris Drive, along the west side of the property. There's a little sliver of right-of-way we'd like to get should that connection to Doris Drive ever go further. And then prior to the final map, we want to see how those drainage improvements have been constructed and where that drainage goes in accordance with the original 76 agreement. That concludes the conditions of approval. Staff is recommending, with the conditions of approval, that the commission determine the project category exempt, adopt findings of fact for approval of the tentative map, and approve the tentative parcel map in accordance with the conditions of approval. Considering the agreement, we also added a condition that the Planning Commission recommend that the council rescind the agreement. With the exception of the road, all the conditions of approval of that agreement have been fulfilled either already or with this parcel map. And so again, we're talking about whether or not this road should be public or private. We have added a condition that the council rescind the agreement in accordance with, or adopt a resolution to rescind that agreement. Once the council does that, this parcel map can be approved. That concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's here, and staff can certainly address any questions you may have.
And
I was going to ask
yeah,
something similar.
I'm sure. I mean, I just never heard of an irrevocable offer of dedication, and then it kind of got muddy to me that we're asking for, but now we're asking for it not for there not to be irrevocable. Is that correct?
Well, we're recommending that the road be private.
Right.
But Public Works wanted an irrevocable offer of dedication. In the future, should they need some right-of-way, they would have it. Okay? The applicant, again, and that is contingent upon a third party, and is contingent upon additional right-of-way. So it may be a condition that may be infeasible.
Who would the third party be? Thank you.
Anyone?
If you look at the bear with me. Remember this exhibit here? This is the road. So this is the applicant here, and these are different owners, albeit they are related in some manner. But this is the application here, is we have a parcel map to subdivide this property right here, okay? So this property here has an easement to use that road, but the road actually is owned by this individual here. So this individual here would have to concur with that condition of approval to allow this applicant to fulfill that condition. So it may be enforceable.
Have an irrevocable offer.
Well, that's just it. It may be enforceable because if that person doesn't agree to it, then this applicant cannot fulfill that requirement.
And therefore,
It's
done.
unless the city wants to pursue eminent domain, that's the only way it's going to happen.
And
We'd
would,
have to essentially remove that condition because it can't be achieved. Yeah.
Lance, can you explain to me, how would one dedicate the road to become a public road? Who would do that? I mean, who would request it?
Well, the city has requested it in the 76 agreement, so the city has already requested it. We're before you tonight on a similar proposal as 99, and the same remains true. The conditions of approval remain valid, and the idea that we should really look at this as a private road, not a public road, per the 76 agreement. So the city has requested it be public already. It just has not been completed.
Now we're suggesting it could be a private road.
Well, yes, now we're suggesting that we should recommend that the road is private, or staff recommend the road be private, or certainly the commission consider that. And should the commission consider that, they can approve the map, provided the council rescinds the agreement. Because in the agreement, it's required that you either build the road to city standards and no further development of this property will occur until such time.
So if we approve the parcel division and the city council needs to make an approval also, is it the right time for us to do the approval or just make the recommendation?
Well, you're making the approval. You have authority over approval of the map. The map wouldn't technically be approved until the council rescinded that agreement. And the map, so if the council does rescind the agreement, the planning commission's decision is really null and void.
It's here with us, that it goes to council, they have the opportunity to either approve or not approve the rescission, and then what?
They're going to take into account the discussion here tonight, the planning commission's actions, and either rescind the agreement or not rescind the agreement.
And if they do not rescind the agreement, then what we do tonight is just null and void.
Yes, because the agreement itself in 76 says no further development, subdivision of the properties will occur until the road is made public and built to city standards.
If I may, one more question. If, as a planning commission, is this one of those items, and I know you probably can't say yes or no, but is this one of those items where we can say, you know what? If the council chooses not to rescind, then what we did here was pointless. Why would can we say, council, you make the decision?
Well, the planning commission this is your
Yeah,
role.
right.
I mean, this is your role.
Right.
The council
But
is
our
elected.
role isn't valid if they don't rescind it.
Well, true, but the discussion by the planning commission will be part of the record,
Okay.
and the council will look to that record,
Perfect.
certainly.
Okay.
Mr. Moorhead?
I might add a little more context to how this road, or at least from my understanding, for the annexation agreement. I actually grew up on one of those parcels, so I was around, and I know Mr. Shine's going to speak to this as well. But in 1975 and 76, when that parcel, or the parcel map was initially created, if you go back to that aerial, that might help. That whole area of that subdivision that is now the Cypress Hill subdivision, so from Celeste Drive, if you go over to Lidster Avenue, Hughes Road, Ridge Road, that was all vacant. There was nothing there. So I think the anticipation was that there could be a future connection made on this roadway connecting back to Celeste. That subdivision was processed in the late 70s, and there was a discussion of a full access through there. And I think Lance had touched on that the community certainly didn't support that. There was lots of vehicles per day going through there. So I think the intent was that it could connect in somewhere along that roadway if it was a public road. What you see there today is an emergency vehicle access. When you get to the end, kind of that elbow there, there's an emergency vehicle access that punches through, and that's what got approved. So, you know, bringing it up to a city standard when it's been a private road, intended to be a private road, the intent was never to connect down to Doris. It clearly shows, just even by the parcel map and the Jan Road layout, there's no easements provided down to Doris Drive. So, you know, I think that was the intent in 75, 76. Certainly didn't know what development was occurring out to the north. That could potentially be a full access through there at some point, and that it would be brought up to city standards, dedicated, and then that access could be made. But that decision was made in the late 70s when that became an emergency vehicle access and not a full connection through. So that's a little bit more history on just at least the public road piece of it, I think.
Could I stop you right there so that I understand? When you're saying the elbow, so we go up and we go over, this is the elbow over here, I can barely.
Yeah, right there, there's emergency vehicle access that goes through. If you drive down that road, you'd see a gate right there that
And-
has a breakaway gate, and it's probably 20 feet wide, 18 feet wide, in between two houses that goes out to Celeste Drive.
And the gate that we see in the pictures that we have,
That is not
not that gate.
That is right. That's the one the fire department, that one is on the road after you come around where
That's
Lance
over
has
there.
that cursor.
Okay.
And that is the one that needs to be modified to meet current fire standards. It's
Got it.
13 feet wide today and needs to be 20 feet wide to meet current standards.
thank you.
And the fire department is satisfied with the current emergency access?
Yes, the fire department had no concerns with respect to access, no concerns with respect to hydrant location. Again, there's a hydrant at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Right.
And the only comments were, if the parcel is approved, parcel map's approved, they would like it wider to 20 feet, the gate itself, and then we'd like a Knox box. If we get an easement for utilities, that Knox box will be both for fire as well as public works, should the water burst. Water line
There's
erupt.
already an easement for public utilities though, correct?
Not in Jan Road, no. So
Oh.
we want that as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Anything else?
That we can, the easement for the public utilities certainly makes sense, and the easement down Jan Road, the Knox box, the modification of the gate, certainly all makes sense. Certainly supportive of what staff is recommending for the conditions. If you have any other questions of me, I'm happy to answer them.
Not yet. Do you have any other questions?
No,
Okay. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. We're accepting comments for 5 minutes directed on this topic.
I'm Ray Shine. I live at 200 Jan Road. Which is this parcel? Right here. The connector is here. It goes from here to Celeste. It's got a gate here and a gate here. I put a kind of a summary of what I'm going to say in writing for you. I assume you all have that.
Yes.
I'm not going to just read it to you. That would bore everybody, and I used to hate classes that the professor did that. But I just want to talk about, this number one, staff has done a very poor job on this report. I talked to the fire department. They didn't even tell me there was a hydrant on that property. They told me that the nearest hydrant was here on Hill Street. So in my comment, I talked about the distance from the hydrant, because that's where the fire department told me the closest hydrant was. On the other side of my property. Also, planning says that they would need the consent of the other owners in the original subdivision to do this road upgrade. That's not true. There's a 1976 contract between the city and the owners of all three of those parcels, saying those owners have an obligation to upgrade the road before there are any more subdivisions. That's in the contract from 1976. And that's signed by Gary Franza. It's signed by Gary Sorensen, who was Kim Franza's husband at the time, and Kim Franza Sorensen. And it was signed by Richard Holub, who owns the property that this is subject to. So all those owners have already signed and agreed to pay for that. So you don't need their approval to do that. And, for the last 45 years, we've assumed that road was going to become public. Now staff is saying, oh, we don't want it to be public. Of course we want it to be public. There are going to be up to 9 houses back there. And those houses need good access. There's a fire danger back there. That hillside going down to Doris from the 4 houses that are there now, when it goes down to Doris, that is just covered in brush and high fire stuff. And I live right at the top of that hill. If that catches fire and the fire department can't get to it fast, that whole neighborhood's going to get wiped out. So I am asking, number one, that you keep the road a public road, that you require it to be brought to city standards, and the city standard in 1999, which was the 1993 drawing that you see that's attached to my notice required a 50-foot road. I have asked a number of times the city staff to give me the current city street standards, and they never have. So I don't know what the current status is, but as far as I can tell from the little bit of research I was able to do, I only got this notice 8 days ago, so it hasn't been a long time to get ready for this hearing. But from the little bit of research I could do online, I think the standard is still 50 feet. And the other thing is, in the original agreement, it says that, well, it wasn't in the original agreement. At the time the Celeste subdivision went in, there was when they put in the access road, it said it was to be an emergency access road and open to pedestrians. It's never been open to pedestrians. So I think another condition you should require is that access be opened to pedestrians. But I would like, one, that you require the road to be improved up to city standards. Two, that you make it a public road. And three, that you do further environmental review, because there's nothing in the file showing any environmental analysis. Nothing about how much traffic there's going to be, nothing about how much fire danger there is. And they say, well, it's exempt. Well, it's only exempt if there isn't going to be a significant impact. You got to do a little bit of work to figure out if there is. And none of that shows in the city file. So I would ask that the Planning Commission either postpone this until the environmental review can be done, or when you make your decision, say that if either side appeals to the city council, that you want the city council to require some environmental work done prior to this analysis. I've lived on that property on and off since 1955, and I say on and off because I grew up and moved away and then inherited it later from my dad when he died. So we're back, and and that's kind of the situation. Can I answer questions?
I'm sorry, we don't know. Your time is up.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Shine.
Matthew Coulter, Grass Valley. Access just for bicycles would be great, or walking through there. But I understand why it really never got punched through, because I think it's Jill Hill, right? It's so steep and so narrow that to get out of that neighborhood on a street, you're basically going down a bobsled run. As kids, we were always like, that was the steepest street around. We all hated to go up it, and you couldn't ride up it. You couldn't barely walk up it. So, but when they built the division behind and they did block off the access, it kind of changed the whole flow, because unfortunately, not long after that, they blocked off the access on Doris, which used to be able to go all the way through to Slate Creek, and the kids could walk that way to high school. And now you have to walk through the whole subdivision, so now the kids can't walk because it's like doubles the length. Because the one homeowner that bought at the end didn't want people walking through it. So that was a bummer. We lost that. On Doris, down at the base of the hill, I can't quite see Carroll where it comes in, but very close to this spot, there's a large pile of toxic dirt that's been there for over 10 years. I wish the city and the county could get on the same sheet of music and remove it. It's known to be toxic. It is a health hazard, and it's right on the edge of the creek there. And the developer that dumped it there is now retired, and he has sold the property, and then the new buyer owns a piece of toxic dirt that somebody hopefully will remove at some point. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, discussion, questions?
Can you tell me about Jan Road? I mean, I see the arm thing coming down. Where does it meet with a city road?
It'd be easiest just a pointer, maybe you could on the map, but it's really at the end of this cul-de-sac, which is Mr. Shine's house. It's right there, but into this cul-de-sac, this is actually the end of the city road. It becomes private from this point back.
Thank you.
Lance, are there any particular rules about private roads? How they work? How many people can be on them? Anything like that?
Well, I'd have to invite Zach, our engineer, to perhaps answer that question. I did consult with fire department. Again, they had no concerns with it. Singular access can serve up to 30 homes, according to the fire department. So it's not an issue from a fire department with respect to access. They have no concerns whatsoever with it. And just, it does meet the fire code standard of minimum 20 feet. So other than the gate and the Knox box, fire department had no comments or concerns or conditions of approval.
If I can add, as far as distinguishing between a private and a public road, the city has approved multiple projects in the city with private roads. And it really has to do with the maintenance. A lot of times you have developers that are asking for narrow roadways for some reason, may have constraints on the property and they don't want to build to the city standard, but they have another standard that they can build to and still achieve some of the ultimate goals and objectives of the city. Timberwood Estates is a project being constructed right now. It's a private road. It's going to
over
be a private road.
Off of Brunswick?
Yeah. That's probably that's one that's under construction now that is. Yeah, it was approved as a private road, even though there's easements for the city's infrastructure for the sewer. But other than that, it is going to be considered that is a private, specially designed road as part of a planned development.
Is Escaton a private road in there?
Sorry, I know this is like one of those like.
I think Escaton might be too, because again, if you were to go in that development, the roads are very small, or they're much smaller.
Yeah,
But
you can only
I'd
park
have to
on one
confirm
side
that,
street.
because that was a special planned development project also.
So,
Like Iron Horse Place, off of Bennett there with the townhomes.
Oh, yeah.
Iron Horse is a private road.
Iron Horse is private. As you go to the next subdivision over, which is going to be the extension of Gold Country Village, that's public. But Iron Horse is, because public, that will be, Iron Horse is public because the intention is to, extend that road over to railroad, as you saw with the first map. But, yeah, Iron Horse is another example of a private.
so when I see this 50-foot easement, that does not apply, excuse me, I'm talking too loud. Does not apply to private roads?
The 50 feet,
50-foot right-of-way is for a public road. It wouldn't apply to private roads, no. This is yeah. And even in 99 at the time, Public Works recommended a reduced standard of the 33. And so that's on the following page. And that's a 33-foot right-of-way. If it was public, if it was determined to be public.
And if I could add just a little, I work for a Public Works Department, not here, but in the neighboring jurisdiction. And in general, the public roads get taken in when there is public benefit to use those roads. So when roadways are going to connect. So when they're serving a private development, private use, again, it's actually a financial burden for the city to take those on and maintain them, and there's no benefit. This road currently is 20 feet wide, meets the fire safe standards. That's typically what is looked for in the private development world. It's maintained as well as most roads around. Honestly, the asphalt's in great shape. It's not a safety issue, but again, generally roads are taken into the public maintained mileage when there is public benefit and public connections being made to serve public use. And in this case, the roadway's not going anywhere. It's going down to a cul-de-sac to serve 4 homes.
Now, was Mr. Shine talking about there being more homes developed on the lot that we're talking about?
When I read the letter, what he's saying is there's the existing house, granny unit, that's 2 homes. There's another house that sits, it's actually my brother's house, the one to the top left there. You could build a granny unit there if you wanted to, right? The second dwelling unit, so that would be 4 homes. The existing house that my aunt owns, that was my grandfather's, you could build one on that lot even once it's split. That would be 6 homes. This new lot being created, you could put a single-family residential and another second dwelling unit. That could be up to 8 homes. That was
So that's the number he's coming
That's
up
the 8
to.
that comes
Okay.
out, I believe, yeah.
Okay. I was afraid we were talking about 8 homes on that little parcel.
No, it's a single-family lot.
Yeah.
It's an estate lot is what it is, honestly.
And the lot sizes we're talking about are no smaller than the other lots in that area, is that correct?
Substantially larger.
Okay.
0.36 acres and
And 0.8 acres.
0.8 acres, yeah.
Well, 0.8 is smaller than most of the lots in the area, but not when you look at Celeste. Celeste's are a lot smaller.
I think
Thank you, Mr. Shine. We'll take your comments when we want to ask questions. Any other questions from the planning commissioners?
Sorry, it'll take me just a second. Lance, do we have an opinion as to Mr. Shine's contention that they are the third-party beneficiaries to the agreement?
We do, and Doug to my left, or Assistant City Attorney, can speak to that issue, certainly.
That's not true. Any third-party beneficiary to the agreement would have had to have been expressly named in the agreement at the time. The agreement, by the way, that you'd recommend to council to be amended or rescinded, that benefits the city. That provision in the agreement that said there would be no further subdivisions unless the road was dedicated as a public street, that benefits the city, and the city's free to waive that condition, waive that provision if it wants. It can rescind the agreement. It can change that. The city's benefited by that provision. Not to confuse you, you're looking a little.
I'm confused, I'm sorry. Everything's on my face.
I answered the first question quickly. There are no express third-party beneficiaries to the agreement. On another related note, the agreement that is going to go to council by resolution to be rescinded contains a provision that says no further subdivisions of this land unless and until there's a dedication of that road as a public road. The city doesn't want it as a public road for the reasons Lance has explained, and the city's free to make that choice to waive that provision. It can say we're the ones that were going to be benefited by that. We don't need that anymore. So.
Sorry, just let me look at my notes for a minute. So we had several questions before us. I guess the first one was, do we believe that road should be public or private? Am I correct?
That is correct, yes. And we provided some rationale in our staff report to basically indicate to the planning commission that as a staff level, we think it should be private. And some of those rationale, some of those reasons are as listed in the overhead here and also contained in your staff report.
You know, I'm just gonna blah, blah, blah here for a minute, but I think that these types of decisions are so hard because there's so much history involved. There's families that have been here for generations, and there's like those weird personal agreements that we'll never know what happened behind closed doors. And I think all of us just want to be really respectful of that. And we don't want to ruin it for anybody or, you know, and it's hard because even if we decide to make a decision here tonight to the best of our ability in possibly 2 weeks, the council's going to be like, no, or yep, and it just puts us in a really odd position that maybe our decision doesn't really carry the weight that it should. And it makes me feel like I want to pass. I want to give it to the elected officials and say, you guys make the decision, because no matter, I mean, I can give you my comments and my 2 cents, but at the end of the day, you have the opportunity to do it, and you guys get paid the big bucks, jokingly, of course, you know, to make those decisions, because it feels like no one's going to win. I appreciate the comment about that it's really no benefit to the city to make it a public road. And that's one responsibility I feel as a planning commission that's very important to me, is I don't ever want the city to have any extra liability that we don't need to have. because that's one of those really hard things as a municipality is we're always taking on responsibility, trying to give it away. And, you know, we've heard all of those things. So for me, I feel like I really am in a difficult spot. There's a lot of family history there, a lot of need history, a lot of things that could have happened years ago, like with connectivity. And now we're kind of sitting here like, oh, nothing's really going to happen. I realize that we need more homes in Grass Valley. So it feels like whatever I do, it's not going to feel good. And I know I don't make decisions based on feelings up here, but I would really like to, you know, go out that door and be really proud of my decision. And I don't personally feel that I can make a decision that will honor that for me. You know, I would prefer to say, you know what? I don't want to make this decision. I would rather give it to the city council.
Commissioner Coots?
Well, I'm thinking about what Yolanda has said. I, on the one hand, really like to have city amenities, but I understand that this is a smaller area. It's relatively private. I believe that I can go with what we're proposing here is to just have it be a private road because it really can't go anywhere. Can't go to Doris, can't go up to the, to the subdivision there. So I think we should accept what's been submitted to us to rescind that agreement.
Does the chair also get to speak? Thank you. I never remember if I'm supposed to speak or can I make motions or whatever. Okay, great. I would agree with Commissioner Coots. I know that there are historical agreements going on here, but I see no benefit for the city to having a public road for this parcel. The situation of adding potentially 2 more homes to that area, to me, doesn't generate enough traffic to warrant serious concern about what it might do to the neighborhood. There's already the potential to have 6 homes there just as it stands. So we're talking about 2. What was the other issue? I'm also convinced about or persuaded by the fire department having no concerns about what's going on with this situation. If the fire department had concerns, I would feel much more strongly to disapprove or require additional requirements for you. So that's my belief on that issue. The other issue I think we're supposed to deal with is, do we require a public easement or not? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, part of the conditions of approval would require a public utility easement, would delete the condition for an IOD, and there's a couple other
Okay.
conditions of approval that would be imposed
So that's how the
on
IOD
map.
would cover it. Okay, okay. So those are my statements about the issues at hand. Are there any other issues we should be considering that you have concerns about or I'm not remembering? I will entertain a motion, if one of the commissioners would make one, to approve this request with or without amendments.
I would be able to make that recommendation to approve this category exempt, adopt the findings of fact from the tentative parcel map, approve the parcel map in accordance with the conditions of approval, and recommend that the city council adopt a resolution rescinding resolution 76-79. Were there additions that we needed to make that came up?
Just the B3, we're not going to request a verbal offer of dedication, but we just would like a note on the map indicating should the road ever be constructed or be dedicated for public purposes, it would need to be constructed city standards. Other conditions are as presented.
So that would be Jan Road created to city standards.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't want to accept it unless it's done.
I have a motion. Is there a second? I second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
guys
Thank you,
convinced me. It's
commissioners.
good. That was good.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your input, Mr. Shine.
Thank you, Mr. Shine.
I'll be around. I'm on vacation.
So
next week or so.
now we can move on to non-public hearing items. Is there anything for us to hear about? Okay, hearing none, we move on to other business, review of the city council items.
The council hasn't really considered any items that have been before the planning commission recently, but it mostly been, they passed a budget last month, and I know the city's been, still a lot of fiscal issues we're still getting brought up to speed with, or the council members are being brought up to speed with, where the city sits in long-term fiscal stability, and so there's been some good presentations on that, and we seem to be in fairly good shape for a city our size, and being prudent with how we're spending funds. That's a good thing for the city.
Excellent news. Excellent news.
I guess Measure E was also passed by the voters.
Sorry.
So the council is going to be, I know they're considering a series of resolutions to implement that.
Uh-huh.
The sales tax increases for public safety and roads and parks. So there'll be, I'm sure there'll be quite a few projects we'll be looking at to, and I know the emphasis of Measure E is going to be more emphasis on parks and also, getting more roads fixed and
Will we hear
sidewalks.
hear about those, or do those go directly to the council?
Yeah, we can brief most of that. Well, the park improvements, if there's physical improvements occurring in the parks, large ones, we will probably be going to the planning commission on those to just walk them through what the improvements are.
I look forward to hearing more about those projects. Any information about future meetings, hearings, or study sessions? Okay.
Our items next month.
I have a question. I'm sorry, Liz. Liz has a question.
I just wanted to report for the Development Review Committee that we've just looked at a couple of things. You may notice across the street, the front of the building that used to be Eldorado Chocolate, they had come with some modifications to the facade, and so they're starting to work on that. Already it looks somewhat better, but
Totally better.
and then there's rebranding of the 76 station to Chevron at the Circle on East Main Street. So we basically were just talking about signage and colors and that kind of thing.
We had a letter from Miss Barbara Carmen asking about a development potential on 654 Linden Avenue. Have we heard anything about that?
That is still, there was a conceptual application that was submitted probably 2 months ago. And it did go before the Development Review Committee and for preliminary comments from city staff and the commissioners and the city architect or the DRC members. And it's really back in the applicant's court. I know they've had at least one public meeting, meaning outreach meeting on themselves, meeting with the neighbors. And it's really back in their court. If they want to submit a formal application, we'll see if that happens or not.
Okay. Any additional announcements or reports from commission members? Nothing? Well, knowing of no other business, hearing no other comments, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks for being so convincing. That was good. I broke that down well.
Yeah, I understand what you
que salen de su profundidad. Cuéntame, quiero saber. Déjame entrar a tu escondite y unirme en tu verdosa suavidad. tiempos pasados, de los grandes tiempos. ¿Sientes la brisa suavemente susurrar?